Welcome to Sound Asleep Stories, where we weave tales of adventure and fantasy to lull you into a peaceful slumber. For tonight's story, we continue with Anya and Torsten as they recover from Melara's betrayal. They begin their search for allies to fight against the dark powers that grow. Get ready for the grand finale. So, settle in, get comfortable, and let the soothing sounds of our story carry you away to the land of dreams. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below telling us what you thought of the story. Sweet dreams.
Chapter 10. Allies in the Shadows. Anya followed Torsten through Markarth's winding stone paths. Her legs burned from their earlier escape, but determination pushed her forward. The city's dwarven architecture loomed overhead, brass pipes releasing bursts of steam that mixed with the mountain mist. The lower district reeked of iron and coal from the smelters. Workers hefted ingots between the forges, while guards patrolled the elevated walkways. Torsten led her down a narrow flight of steps to a building carved directly into the mountainside. Two warriors flanked the entrance, their armor bearing the wolf insignia of the companions. They straightened at Torsten's approach, fists crossing their chests in salute.
Brother Torsten?
The taller guard's eyes flickered to his war paint.
We heard rumors you would return to Markarth.
Inside, the converted mead hall hummed with activity. Warriors sparred in a sand-filled pit, while others maintained weapons or studied maps spread across long tables. Torchlight reflected off polished armor and well-oiled blades.
Brothers and sisters!
Torsten's voice boomed across the hall. Conversations ceased as heads turned toward them.
I come seeking aid against a grave threat.
A broad-shouldered woman with silver-streaked hair stepped forward.
Speak your piece, Torsten. The companions hear you.
Dark magic stirs in Markarth. A cult moves to summon a forgotten Daedric prince and obtain an artifact of terrible power.
Torsten's hand rested on his axe.
She holds a keystone vital to their ritual.
Murmurs rippled through the gathered warriors. The silver-haired woman raised her hand for silence.
The companions stand against those who would threaten Skyrim with foul magic.
She drew her sword, its edge catching the torchlight.
You have our steel, brother.
Other warriors stepped forward, weapons raised in agreement. Anya watched as nearly 24 skilled fighters pledged their aid. Hope kindled in her chest. Perhaps they weren't as outmatched as she'd feared. Anya winced as gentle hands cleaned the cuts along her arms. The healer, an elderly woman with kind eyes, applied a poultice that smelled of mountain flowers and frost miriam.
Hold still, child.
The healer wrapped a clean linen bandage around Anya's forearm.
These wounds need proper tending.
Across the room, two companions worked on Torsten's injuries. Her mentor bore the pain without complaint, cleaning a deep gash across his shoulder. A young warrior approached, carrying a bow of ancient Nordic design. The wood gleamed with a deep amber finish, intricate carvings of wolves running along its length.
For you.
He placed the weapon in her hands.
Found this in our armory. Ancient thing, but the draw's still true.
The bow felt alive in her grip, its weight perfect, the string humming with potential. She ran her fingers over the carvings, feeling the history embedded in each groove.
And these.
He set down a quiver filled with arrows, their steel heads razor sharp, fletched with hawk feathers.
Finest arrows we have.
Thank you. Anya tested the bow's draw, muscle memory guiding her movements despite her bandaged arms. The string pulled smooth and even. The elderly healer finished her work, patting Anya's shoulder.
There now. Rest while you can.
Anya nodded, but her attention remained fixed on her new weapon. After losing her old bow in their escape, this gift meant more than the companions could know. In the Reach, a hunter without a bow was like a wolf without teeth. Dawn painted the Reach mountains in amber and gold as the company of warriors filed through Markarth's brass gates. Anya adjusted her new bow across her back, watching the sunrise pierce through gaps in the ancient stonework. The companions had access to horses they could use to make up for lost time. Her mare, a dappled grey borrowed from the companion stable, pranced beside her. Torsten rode point, his war paint stark against his weathered face. 24 companion warriors followed in formation, their armor glinting, weapons at the ready. The thunder of hooves echoed off the mountain walls as they descended the winding path toward the valley below. The cold mountain air bit at Anya's cheeks. Her mount's breath came in white puffs as they navigated the treacherous mountain paths. Below, the Reach spread out, all jagged peaks and deep valleys shrouded in morning mist.
Keep alert.
Torsten's voice carried over the wind. A raven called overhead, its cry piercing the morning quiet. The bird circled once before vanishing into the mist. A dark omen, or simply nature's way, Anya couldn't tell. The column of riders wound through narrow passes and across icy streams. Anya's thighs ached from gripping her mount, but pride kept her spine straight. These were the companions, legendary warriors of Skyrim, and she rode among them as an equal. The path toward Hag's End stretched before them, a dark thread through the white-capped mountains. Their horses' hooves kicked up loose stones that clattered down the steep slopes. The morning sun climbed higher, burning away the mist, but doing little to warm the bitter mountain air. While the band rode up the mountain, a dark ritual started within the ruins. The massive stone doors of Hag's End groaned open. Ilara's robes whispered against ancient flagstones as candlelight caught her silver hair. The ritual chamber stretched before her, its vaulted ceiling disappearing into darkness. Pillars rose like petrified giants, carved with runes that pulsed with an eerie blue glow. Bloodstains marked the stone altar at the chamber's heart, remnants of sacrifices past. Ilara placed a soul stone upon its surface, the gem's purple light casting strange shadows across her face. The power within called to her, a siren song of untold potential. 2 hooded figures moved to flank her, their ceremonial robes bearing the sigil of the Forgotten Prince. Incense smoke curled through the air, thick with the scent of nightshade and deathbell. The cultists raised their arms in unison, beginning a low chant that echoed through the chamber. Ilara ascended the steps to the ritual podium, her movements precise and measured. Ancient texts lay open upon its surface, their pages brittle with age. Diagrams of celestial alignments and arcane formulae covered the yellowed parchment. showing the proper placement of each component. The soul stone's glow intensified, responding to the chanting. Shadows danced across the walls as if alive, twisting into shapes that hurt the eye to follow. The very air grew heavy with magical energy, pressing down like a physical weight.
The stars align, brothers and sisters.
Elara's voice carried an otherworldly resonance.
Our prince awaits beyond the veil.
The cultists' chanting grew louder, their words twisting through the air in impossible patterns. Dark shapes writhed at the edges of the chamber. The soul stone's light pulsed in time with their voices, casting long shadows that seemed to reach out with claws. Elara lifted the stone above her head. Power crackled between the high elf's fingers, arcing through the chamber like purple lightning. The very air felt charged, heavy with the weight of ancient magic. Runes carved into the chamber's pillars blazed to life, their blue glow fighting against the soul stone's purple radiance. Waves of force rippled outward from the ritual circle. The cultists' chanting reached a fever pitch, their voices blending into an inhuman chorus. Through it all, Elara stood like a statue, her eyes closed in concentration as reality itself seemed to bend around her. The air crackled and tore apart like fabric, opening a void of absolute darkness at the chamber's heart. Purple lightning arced between the pillars as reality fractured. The soul stone's light grew blinding, then winked out entirely, plunging the chamber into darkness broken only by the ritual circle's ethereal glow. A figure stepped through the rift, darkness given form. Light bent around its edges, refusing to touch the being's surface. In its hand, a curved dagger caught what little illumination remained, its surface rippling like scales. The weapon's edge gleamed with an unnatural hunger, its very presence seeming to draw the warmth from the air. The cultists fell to their knees, pressing their foreheads to the cold stone floor. Their chanting dissolved into reverent whispers. Elara remained standing, her silver hair floating in an unseen wind.
My prince.
Her voice carried both triumph and terror.
We have prepared the way, as promised.
The figure's presence filled the chamber. When it moved, reality shuddered. The serpent's fang in its grip pulsed with a sickly green light, casting shadows that writhed with minds of their own. The prince's voice resonated through bone and blood rather than air.
The veil parts, the way opens.
Each word froze the air, leaving crystals of ice that shattered and reformed in impossible patterns. The dagger in his grip sang a song of conquest and corruption, its ancient magic awakening after centuries of slumber. The figure moved with liquid grace, each step leaving ripples in the fabric of reality. Light bent away from its form, creating a void in the shape of royalty. The prince extended the serpent's fang toward Elara, its blade catching none of the chamber's dim illumination.
Take what is promised.
The words rang through bone and mind rather than air. Elara's fingers closed around the dagger's hilt. Purple energy crackled up her arm, racing across her skin like lightning through storm clouds. Her silver hair darkened to obsidian, floating in an unseen wind. Cracks spread across her face, glowing with inner fire. Her elegant robes transformed, warping into plates of midnight armor that seemed to drink in what little light remained. The high elf's emerald eyes blazed with newfound power, their color shifting to match the sickly green pulse of the artifact in her grip. Her skin split further, revealing glimpses of shadow beneath. The armor grew more elaborate, sprouting spikes and curves that hurt to look at directly.
The price is paid.
The prince's voice resonated through the chamber.
The pact is sealed.
Elara raised the serpent's fang high, its blade singing a song of corruption and conquest. The weapon's magic poured into her, reshaping flesh and bone to better serve its master's will. Her transformation continued, turning the once elegant high elf into something that straddled the line between mortal and Daedric. The cultists remained prostrate, their whispered prayers filling the air with a susurration of devotion. Magic crackled between the pillars, responding to the presence of both prince and artifact. The chamber's runes pulsed in time with Elara's heartbeat, their light fighting against the creeping darkness that emanated from her altered form. Chapter 11. The Heart of the Labyrinth. Anya's mount snorted, its breath misting in the frigid air. The path to Hag's End wound through jagged rocks and patches of ancient snow, barely wide enough for the horses to pass single file. Mountains loomed on either side, their peaks lost in heavy clouds. Patches of dead vegetation clung to the weathered stone, brittle and black in the weak sunlight. No birds called, no life stirred. Torsten rode ahead, his axe casting dancing shadows across the cliff face. His horse's hooves clicked against loose stones.
The horses are spooked.
The air grew colder as they climbed higher, carrying the metallic tang of old magic. Anya's mount tossed its head, fighting the reins. Raw power radiated from somewhere above, making her skin prickle beneath her furs. Ancient pillars marked the approach to Hag's End, their surfaces carved with warnings in a language Anya couldn't read. Frost crept up the stone in unnatural patterns, defying gravity to spread like spiderwebs across the weathered surface.
We'll need to leave the horses.
Torsten dismounted, patting his nervous stallion.
Path gets too treacherous from here.
Anya slid from her saddle, boots crunching in the snow. Her fingers found the companion's arrows in her quiver. A gust of wind howled between the peaks, carrying whispers that might have been voices. The horses stamped nervously, ears flicking back and forth. Anya secured them to a stunted tree, making sure they could break free if needed.
Hag's End.
Torsten's voice carried a weight of recognition. The ancient structure perched above them like a crow's nest, its dark stone melding with the mountain's natural rock. Magic leaked from its seams, distorting the air like heat waves. Even from here, Anya could feel evil brewing within. Anya paused at the entrance, her hand brushing against the cold stone. Last time, worn steps had led down into darkness. Now, the passage climbed upward, carved directly into living rock. Magic pulsed through the walls in nauseating waves.
By the 9!
Torsten's fingers tightened around his axe.
Place has reshaped itself.
Behind them, the band of companions readied their weapons. Boots scraped against stone as they formed a defensive circle, torchlight dancing across drawn steel. Anya knocked an arrow, leading the way up the twisting passage. Her feet found purchase on steps that hadn't existed hours before. Ancient Nordic carvings adorned the walls, depicting battles she'd never seen during their first visit. The corridor opened into a vast chamber where a great hall should have been. Pillars of black ice stretched toward a ceiling lost in shadow. Frost patterns spread across the floor, forming and reforming into different shapes. Magic's stronger. Anya's voice echoed strangely, as if the very air consumed her words. Everything's different. Archways lined the chamber walls, each leading to darkness. Last time, there had been only 2 paths. Now, countless options sprawled before them.
Look!
Torsten pointed to the floor. Fresh footprints marked the frost, not their own.
Ilara's been here.
A low rumble shook the chamber. The ice pillars groaned, shifting positions like pieces on a game board. Walls flowed like water, reshaping themselves before Anya's eyes. The whole place is alive. One of the companions backed away from a writhing wall. It's changing as we watch. Anya traced the footprints with her gaze. They led toward an archway on the far side. But as she watched, the opening began to seal itself, stone flowing like molten metal. Anya crept forward, her boots silent on the frosted stone. The chamber ahead pulsed with candlelight, casting long shadows across walls covered in twisted runes. A group of cultists huddled around an altar, their dark robes marked with the Serpent sigil. Her fingers found an arrow. The cultists chanted in a language that made her teeth ache, their voices rising and falling in an unnatural rhythm.
Now,
Torsten whispered. Anya's arrow flew true, striking the nearest cultist in the chest. He dropped without a sound. Before the others could react, Torsten charged forward with a battle cry that shook dust from the ceiling. Magic crackled through the air. Lightning struck the spot where Anya had stood moments before. She rolled behind a pillar, loosing another arrow into the chaos. The companions spread out, their steel singing as they engaged the cultists. Blood sprayed across ancient stone. A cultist spell caught one of the warriors in the chest, freezing him solid. Anya vaulted over a fallen column, driving her hunting knife into a cultist's back. His death curse burned her arms, but she pushed through the pain. Another arrow found its mark in a spellcaster's throat. Torsten's axe cleaved through 2 cultists at once. His war paint gleamed in the magical light. A spell grazed his shoulder, leaving frost in his beard. "Behind you!" Anya shouted. She put an arrow through the eye of a cultist preparing to backstab Torsten. Magic and steel clashed in the confined space. 3 more companions fell to dark spells, their bodies twisted by unnatural forces. But the cultists paid dearly for each warrior they took down. A cultist backed against a wall, his hands weaving complex patterns in the air. Anya's arrow took him in the heart before he could complete the spell. His body crumpled across the blood-stained altar, knocking over candles and ritual implements. Anya caught Torsten's eye through the chaos of battle. Her mentor nodded toward a darkened passageway, while the companions kept the remaining cultists occupied. The passage twisted away from the main chamber, magical energy crackling along its walls. Anya's boots on the uneven stone as she crept forward, arrow at the ready. Torsten followed close behind, his axe casting eerie shadows in the dim light. A faint blue glow beckoned from around the next bend. Anya pressed her back against the wall, inching closer to peer around the corner. Her fingers tightened on her bowstring as voices drifted down the corridor.
Through here?
Torsten's voice barely carried over the sounds of battle. He pointed to fresh scuff marks on the floor, the same footprints they had followed earlier. Magic pulsed, stronger with each step. The corridor opened into a smaller chamber, where crystalline formations jutted from the walls like frozen lightning. At its center stood an ancient arch, its surface crawling with runic symbols. Boot prints led straight through the arch. Anya traced them with her gaze, noting their hurried pattern. Elara came this way? Anya kept her voice low. Recently?
Aye.
Torsten examined the arch.
Magic's fresh too. Whatever she's planning, we're not far behind.
Anya knocked an arrow, leading the way through the arch. The air shimmered around them as they passed through, leaving a taste like blood on her tongue. Beyond, another twisted corridor beckoned, this one sloping upward. Anya's boots crunched on frost-covered stone as the passage twisted upward. Each step brought new changes. Walls flowing like water, doorways appearing and vanishing. Paths different. Anya touched a wall that hadn't existed moments before. Ice-cold magic pulsed beneath her fingers. A grinding noise echoed behind them. The corridor they'd traveled through sealed itself, stone flowing together like wax. New openings appeared on either side, beckoning with faint blue light. Runes carved into the walls pulsed with an inner glow. Ancient Nordic script shifted and changed, forming words that made Anya's head spin.
This way.
Torsten, his voice tight. A rumble shook the passage. Walls rippled, creating new paths. The floor beneath Anya's feet tilted, forcing her to grab a protruding stone for balance. When she looked up, Torsten stood on the other side of a newly formed gap. Torsten! Anya reached for him, but the gap widened.
Keep moving!
His voice echoed strangely.
Place is trying to separate us. Don't trust what you see.
More walls rose between them. Anya found herself alone in a circular chamber with 3 identical exits. Runes above each doorway whispered, contradicting promises of escape. Her bow felt useless against stone that lived and breathed. The maze shifted again, passages realigning like pieces of a puzzle. Cold air brushed her neck. The hallway behind her had vanished, replaced by solid wall. The remaining exits pulsed with magical light. Whispers echoed from all directions, promising safety, treasure, power. But Anya recognized the hollow ring of lies. This place fed on fear and indecision, growing stronger with each moment of doubt. She closed her eyes, blocking out the maze's deceptions. Her hunter's instincts detected the faintest draft from one passage. Real air, not magical illusion. Without hesitation, she moved toward it. The darkness pressed against Anya's eyes like a physical weight. Her fingers traced the cold stone wall, searching for any break or seam. The maze had sealed itself completely, leaving her in a space barely large enough to stretch her arms.
Poor little Nord.
Elara's voice drifted through the blackness, coming from everywhere and nowhere.
Lost in the dark, cut off from your mentor.
Anya's hand found her bowl. though arrows would be useless here. The grip brought little comfort against the press of ancient magic.
Did you really think you could stop what was coming?
Ilara's laugh echoed off unseen walls.
The prince chose me long ago. My imprisonment was just another step toward his return.
Magic crackled through the air, raising the hair on Anya's arms. Blue light flickered in the darkness, casting strange shadows that moved independently of any source.
Your ancestors knew his power.
Ilara's whispers brushed against Anya's ear, though she stood alone.
That's why they tried to erase him from history. But you can't kill a god, little hunter. You can only delay the inevitable.
Anya pressed her back against the wall, fighting down rising panic. Her breath came in short bursts, visible in the magical light. The space seemed to shrink with each passing moment.
I could spare you, you know.
Ilara's voice turned honeyed, seductive.
The prince rewards those who serve him willingly. Your skills could be useful to us.
The whispers wrapped around Anya like silk threads, trying to weave their way into her mind. Each word carried a weight of power, an ancient magic that pulled at her thoughts.
Join us, or die here forgotten in the dark.
Ilara's presence pressed closer.
Choose quickly, little Nord. The maze grows hungry.
A familiar scent hit Anya's nostrils, acrid and metallic, like blood mixed with lightning. Her heart pounded against her ribs as recognition dawned. Every breath carried the same bitter tang from her nightmare, where she'd fought the shadowy figure wielding the fang-shaped dagger. Dark energy crackled through the confined space, leaving after-images burned into her vision. The walls pulsed with the same sickly blue light that had filled the dream realm of oblivion. Even the temperature matched, neither hot nor cold, but wrong in a way that made her skin crawl. Anya's fingers brushed the spot above her heart where the dream blade had pierced her. No wound marked her flesh, but phantom pain ghosted through her chest. The magical darkness pressed against her like a physical weight, carrying whispers that echoed the clash of steel from her nightmare. Her bow hummed with stored energy, responding to the ancient power that saturated the air. The similarities were too precise to be coincidence. This place, these sensations, her dream hadn't been just a dream. It had been a warning, or perhaps a glimpse of what awaited. The realization made her blood run cold. Ilara appears in front, and Anya's bow sang as she loosed an arrow at her heart. Blue fire erupted from the High Elf's palm, incinerating the projectile mid-flight. The magical flames cast dancing shadows across the chamber walls.
Such predictable attacks.
Ilara twirled the serpent's fang between her fingers. Dark energy pulsed along the curved blade, its surface rippling like liquid shadow.
Your kind never learns.
Anya rolled behind a fallen column as another blast of magic scorched the air where she'd stood. Her quiver felt lighter. Too few arrows remained for a prolonged fight. The bitter taste of ozone filled her mouth.
Running already?
Ilara's footsteps echoed off ancient stone.
And here I thought Nord hunters were supposed to be brave.
An arrow whizzed past Ilara's ear, drawing a thin line of blood. The High Elf's laughter turned cold. The serpent's fang flared with sickly power, its glow painting the chamber in shades of midnight blue. Anya vaulted over the column, closing the distance with her hunting knife drawn. Steel met cursed metal. The impact numbed her arm to the shoulder. Elara danced away, her movements fluid as water. The dagger left trails of darkness in its wake, each swing carrying enough force to shatter stone. Anya barely managed to deflect a strike aimed at her throat.
Better!
Elara's eyes blazed with otherworldly light.
But still not good enough.
The High Elf's next attack came faster than thought. The serpent's fang sliced through Anya's leather armor like paper, leaving a shallow cut across her ribs. Cold spread from the wound, threatening to steal her breath. Anya stumbled back, her movements growing sluggish. Each heartbeat pushed the dagger's poison deeper into her veins. The chamber spun lazily around her as Elara advanced, the cursed weapon pulsing in time with Anya's fading consciousness. Chapter 12. Clash of Fates. Heavy footfalls echoed through the chamber as Torsten burst in, his war axe gleaming in the magical light. Elara's back remained turned, her attention fixed on Anya's weakened form. Torsten's axe bit deep into Elara's shoulder. The High Elf's scream of pain and rage shook dust from the ancient stones. Dark energy exploded outward as she whirled to face him.
You dare?
The serpent's fang moved like quicksilver. The cursed blade plunged into Torsten's chest, emerging crimson through his back. His axe clattered to the floor. Blood trickled from Torsten's mouth as he dropped to his knees. The sight ignited something in Anya's chest, an ancient power that burned through the poison in her veins. Brilliant white light erupted around her body, coalescing into gleaming armor that seemed crafted from starlight itself. Intricate Nordic runes blazed along the curved plates, each symbol pulsing with raw power. The armor moved like liquid metal, responding to her thoughts. A bow materialized in her grip, its limbs carved from what appeared to be pure moonlight. The string hummed with contained energy, and a quiver of arrows wreathed in white flame appeared across her back. Anya rose to her feet. The chamber now split between Elara's writhing shadows and the radiance pouring from her transformed form. The darkness recoiled where her light touched it, hissing like water on hot steel. Get away from him. Anya's voice carried the weight of generations of Nord warriors, echoing with power that made the very stones tremble. Raw power crackled through the air as Elara lifted the serpent's fang above her head. Dark energy rippled across her form, twisting her features into something inhuman. Her once emerald eyes burned with amber fire.
No more games.
Elara's words rang with otherworldly resonance.
Let me show you true power.
The chamber erupted in a maelstrom of shadow and flame. Anya loosed an arrow, but Elara battered it aside with a gesture. The High Elf's hands traced sigils in the air, each movement leaving burning afterimages. Reality fractured around Anya. The stone walls of Hag's End melted away, replaced by a crimson sky and floating islands of black rock. Lightning arced between crystalline spires that stretched toward a bleeding sun. Oblivion, the realm of Daedric princes. Anya's boots crunched on obsidian gravel. Her radiant armor flickered, its light dimmed by the oppressive atmosphere. Each breath tasted of ash and copper. Elara appeared before her, the serpent's fang leaving trails of darkness as she moved. The blade found gaps in Anya's defense, scoring hits that burned fire. Blood ran down Anya's arm, each drop sizzling as it hit the ground.
Your Nord magic means nothing here.
Ilara's strikes came faster, driving Anya back toward a cliff's edge. Anya's arrows dissolved into mist before reaching their target. Her movements grew sluggish, as if fighting through deep water. The realm itself seemed to resist her presence. The serpent's fang plunged deep into Anya's shoulder. She stumbled, her bow slipping from numb fingers. Ilara's boot connected with her chest, sending her sprawling onto the sharp rocks. Darkness crept at the edges of Anya's vision as Ilara stood over her, the cursed dagger raised for a killing blow. The high elf's face was a mask of triumph and madness. Pain lanced through Anya's body as the serpent's fang descended. In that moment of desperation, her mind reached what she knew well. The crimson sky of oblivion wavered, replaced by memories of pine-scented air and mountain paths. Anya's mind drifted to her earliest days as a hunter, when the wild called to her blood. Dawn mist had clung to her boots as she tracked deer through mountain meadows. The bow felt natural in her hands, like an extension of her arm. Each arrow found its mark with practiced grace, providing food for her village through the harshest winters. Mountain streams whispered ancient songs as she moved through the wilderness. Her fingers traced bark patterns, reading stories written in sap and moss. Every broken twig told a tale. Every scattered leaf revealed the passage of life. At night, beneath aurora-painted skies, wolves howled their greeting. She learned their language, not with words, but through instinct and respect. The pack accepted her presence, recognizing a kindred hunter. The thrill of pursuit quickened her heart, but never from cruelty. Each hunt was a dance, a ritual passed down through generations of Nord blood. Her arrows brought swift mercy, honoring the sacrifice that sustained life. Fresh snow captured stories in pristine white pages. Here, a hare's desperate dash from a fox. There, an elk's mighty stride as it forged through drifts. Reading these tales brought more joy than any book. The land had taught her patience, waiting in perfect stillness as a buck approached her hiding spot, learning the rhythms of seasons, the patterns of migration. Nature's wisdom flowed through her veins like ancient magic. Even now, facing death in this realm of darkness, the wild called to her. Its power remained alive in her heart, untouched by shadow or corruption. The strength of the hunt burned in her blood, fierce and pure as northern steel. Reality shattered. The crimson skies of oblivion dissolved into whirling snow and howling wind. Anya felt her body break apart into countless motes of light, scattering across the bitter night air. Ilara's triumphant cry turned to a gasp of shock as the ground beneath her feet changed from obsidian to deep powder snow. The high elf spun in place, the serpent's fang cutting uselessly through empty air. The dark armor that had made Ilara look so imposing in oblivion now worked against her. Metal plates designed to channel destructive magic became perfect conductors for the killing cold. Frost crept along the edges of her pauldrons and gauntlets, working its way beneath her skin.
Where are you?
Ilara's voice cracked as her teeth chattered. Her breath frosted in the air as she stumbled through knee-deep snow.
Show yourself, Nord.
The wind picked up, driving needles of ice against exposed skin. Elara's movements grew increasingly frantic as the cold seeped into her bones. The serpent's fangs' glow dimmed, its power seemingly muted by the wild.
You can't hide forever.
The words came out as a desperate wheeze. Elara hugged herself, her proud stance crumbling as violent shivers racked her body. The high elf fell to her knees, the snow's touch burning like fire through her armor. Ice crystals formed in her silver hair, and her lips took on a bluish tinge. Anya's boots crunched through familiar snow as she tracked her prey. Blood dripped from her shoulder wound, but the cold numbed the pain. Ancient whispers rode the wind, carrying the voices of Nord hunters who had stalked these lands for generations. Elara's tracks cut deep through the powder, clumsy, desperate prints that betrayed her southern origins. Each stumbling step told a story of someone who had never faced the raw fury of a northern winter. The high elf's magic sparked and died in the bitter air, leaving only traces of ozone that faded into nothing. 100 paces ahead, Elara fought through a snowdrift, her once elegant robes now frozen stiff. Her movements mirrored those of the buck Anya had pursued. The wind shifted. Anya dropped low, using a ridge of snow for cover. Her ancestors' power flowed through the land itself, turning Elara's attempts at magic into harmless sparks. Here, in the heart of Nordic wilderness, the High Elf's Daedric abilities meant nothing. Elara stumbled again, falling face first into the snow. The serpent's fangs slipped from her frozen fingers. Anya knocked an arrow, her movements fluid despite her injuries. The bow creaked softly, a sound that echoed across time, connecting her to every Nord hunter who had come before. The same stance, the same breath control, the same perfect moment of clarity before the kill. Elara turned at the sound, her eyes wide with fear. Frost covered her face, and her lips had turned blue. The corrupted power that had made her nearly invincible in oblivion now abandoned her to the mercy of the northern wild. The high elf raised a trembling hand, desperately trying to summon her magic. Only a weak flicker answered, snuffed out by the howling wind and the ancient power that permeated the land. Wind whipped around her, but her aim remained steady. Years of hunting had taught her to read the air currents, to anticipate their effect on her arrow's flight. The perfect opening appeared as Elara struggled to rise. A gap in the dark armor revealed itself, where shoulder plate met chest piece. Anya's arrow flew true, its path guided by generations of Nord hunters. The projectile pierced Elara's heart with deadly precision, punching through the weak point in her corrupted armor. Elara's body jerked backward. Her mouth opened in a silent scream as the arrow's power coursed through her. The dark energy that had sustained her flickered and died, leaving only a broken form in the snow. As Anya approached her fallen enemy, her boots crunched snow, each step heavy with exhaustion. Her own wounds throbbed, but victory fueled her forward. The wild belongs to those who respect it, not those who seek to corrupt it. Anya's words carried across the frozen landscape as she stood over Elara's body. Reaching down, her fingers closed around the serpent's fang. The weapon's surface felt cold, even in the freezing air. Dark energy pulsed through the blade, but the wild's power kept it contained. Reality shifted. Snow and wind gave way to stone walls. The chamber in Hag's End materialized around her, and Anya found herself standing beside Torsten's fallen form. The serpent's fang pulsed in Anya's grip, dark energy coiling around her fingers like smoke. A voice cut through her mind, ancient and seductive.
Your friend bleeds out before you. Such a waste of potential, of strength.
The words burned behind her eyes.
Accept my power. Bond with me, and he will rise again, stronger than before.
Anya's hand trembled as she knelt beside Torsten. Blood pooled beneath him, each breath growing more labored. Her mentor's weathered face had gone pale, his skin cold to touch.
Don't.
Torsten's voice came as a rasp. His calloused hand gripped her wrist with surprising strength.
I hear it too. Lies. All lies.
But you'll die! Tears blurred her vision. The dagger's whispers grew more insistent, painting visions of Torsten restored to his prime, of battles yet to be won together.
Better death than corruption.
Blood flecked his lips as he spoke.
The axe. Use it. End this. Now.
Torsten's grip weakened. His eyes, still sharp despite the pain, met hers one final time. A slight nod. Then his hand fell away. Anya's fingers closed around the handle of his war axe. The familiar weight of Nordic steel steadied her grip as she laid the serpent's fang across a fallen stone. The dagger's whispers turned to screams of rage as she raised the axe. Ancient Nordic runes along the axe head blazed with power as it descended. Steel met cursed metal. A thunderous crack split the air. Dark energy exploded outward as the serpent's fang shattered. Otherworldly shrieks echoed through the chamber, and the stench of sulfur and decay filled her lungs. The fragments of the blade crumbled to ash, carried away by an unseen wind. The screams faded, leaving only the hollow silence of the ancient chamber. Grey streaked Anya's hair as she crouched beside young Eric in the underbrush. Pine needles cushioned their movements while dawn painted the mountain peaks in amber light. Her old bow, carved from ancient pine, rested across her back, while Eric gripped his smaller weapon with eager hands. "Patience, boy," Anya whispered as the boy fidgeted. "Watch how the doe moves. Remember what I taught you about reading the wind." Eric nodded, his blue eyes bright with concentration. At 12 winters, he reminded her of herself at that age, full of fire and determination. The same spark Torsten had noticed in her so many years ago. The doe stepped into the clearing, proud against the morning sky. Eric's breath caught. His bow creaked as he drew, movement smooth from countless hours of practice. "Steady up." The words carried echoes of Torsten's voice in Anya's memory.
Feel the shot.
Anya could almost hear him now, but she knew that was impossible. The arrow flew true, taking the doe clean through the heart. Pride swelled in Anya's chest as Eric leaped up with a whoop of triumph.
I did it!
His grin stretched ear to ear as he bounded toward his first kill. Anya followed at a slower pace, her hand brushing the worn axe at her belt. Torsten's final gift. 20 winters had passed since that day, in Hag's End, yet the memories remained sharp as Nordic steel. After blessing the doe's spirit, Anya showed Eric how to dress the kill properly. The boy listened intently, just as she had when Torsten taught her these same lessons, reciting the old words.
The land provides.
The land provides.
And we honor its gifts.
And we honor its gifts. Later, as Eric proudly shared his success with the village, Anya gazed toward the mountains. The aurora danced across the stars, and for a moment she imagined Torsten's approving nod. The realm was safe. The serpent's fang lay shattered, its dark prince banished. And here, in the heart of the north, new generations learned the old ways. The cycle continued as it always had. Anya smiled, touching the silver pendant that marked her as a master hunter. Torsten would have been proud.